My security camera pings my phone. Another alert. I watch as a figure, my neighbor, strolls up my driveway like she owns the place. She glances up and down the street, then casually scoops a package off my porch. She walks back toward her own pristine, HOA-approved property and gets in her car, her safe space. She settles the package on the passenger seat, tearing into it like a kid on Christmas morning, probably picturing some fancy new gadget or luxury item. Instead, a massive cloud of brilliant, impossible-to-hide, industrial-grade blue dye erupts from the box. It covers everything. Her, the cream leather seats, the dashboard. Her face is a perfect mask of shock and pure, instant regret. She's been stealing my packages for 6 months. The cops said they couldn't help. The HOA told me to be more neighborly. So I took matters into my own hands. This is the story of how I used a little engineering and a whole lot of frustration to build the perfect trap. It all started small. An email would pop up, "Your package has been delivered." I'd walk to the front door, open it, and nothing, an empty porch. The first time I figured, okay, a glitch. Maybe the driver hit the button too early. I gave it a day. Still nothing. The seller was great and sent a replacement. I wrote it off as a one-time thing. Then it happened again. This time it was a birthday gift for my dad. A nice watch. Delivered. Vanished. Now I was getting mad. I checked the footage from my cheap, low-res security camera. It was grainy, but it showed exactly what I feared. A car I didn't recognize pulled up. Someone hopped out, grabbed the package, and was gone. It was too fast, too blurry to get a plate number or a good look at them. And this isn't just happening to me. This is the reality for millions of people. In 2023 alone, an estimated 120 million packages were stolen right off of porches in the U.S. That's a staggering, multi-billion-dollar problem for everyone, but when it's your stuff, it just feels personal. You feel violated, like someone just walked into your space and took what was yours. And in a neighborhood like mine, run by a homeowners association, you expect a certain level of order. That's what you pay the fees for, right? Our HOA is particular. They have rules for the exact shade of beige your house can be. The maximum height of your grass, down to the millimeter. The precise angle your recycling bin must be at the curb. You'll get a passive-aggressive letter if your garden gnome is deemed aesthetically inappropriate. So imagine my surprise when I brought up the repeated thefts at a community meeting, and the response was basically a collective shrug. Their brilliant idea? Put a friendly reminder in the newsletter. A friendly reminder for thieves. After the third package, a set of specialized tools I needed was stolen. I filed a police report. The officer was nice enough, but blunt. Without a clear face or license plate, there was almost nothing they could do. Porch piracy is so common, and the items are usually not valuable enough, so it's just not a high priority. I got it, but that didn't help me. I was on my own, and that's when I started noticing a pattern. My neighbor, let's call her Karen, because you'll see why, is the self-appointed queen of the HOA. She's the one who walks around with a ruler checking lawn heights. She leaves anonymous notes about trash cans being left out for 2 hours and 1 minute after pickup. Her house is a monument to suburban conformity. We'd had a few run-ins before. Once, she complained my office light was polluting the natural nighttime ambiance. Another time, she filed a formal complaint over a single dandelion near my mailbox, claiming it threatened the aesthetic integrity of the block. Living next to her was like living next to a finely tuned instrument of passive aggression. So, when the theft started, I assumed it was a random porch pirate. But after the third one, it felt too clean, too quick. It was like someone knew the exact moment the delivery truck was gone. I decided it was time for an upgrade. I ditched the old blurry camera and invested in a full-on, multi-camera 4K security system covering every angle of my front yard. Better night vision, motion alerts, crystal clear resolution. If a fly landed on my lawn, I was going to have a high-definition portrait of it. The fourth package to disappear was a new pair of running shoes. My phone buzzed, motion alert. I opened the live feed just in time to see the driver set the box down, snap a confirmation photo, and leave. 10 minutes later, another buzz. I watched as my neighbor, Karen, walked out of her house, pretending to check her mail. She glanced left, glanced right, then made a beeline for my porch. She picked up the box, tucked it under her arm like it was hers, and walked right back into her house. I was stunned. It wasn't some random thief. It was her, the queen of the HOA, the guardian of neighborhood standards. The dandelion despot. I saved the footage. I must have replayed it 20 times. It was her, no question. The sheer audacity was breathtaking. She just took it, in broad daylight, as if she were entitled to it. That feeling of violation turned into white-hot rage. This wasn't just a crime, it was personal. My first thought was to march over there and confront her, phone in hand. But what would that do? She'd deny it, claim it was a mistake, that she thought it was her package. She would lie, gaslight, and then probably file an HOA complaint against me for harassment. My second thought? The police. This time I had her. Clear shot of her face. Crime in progress. I made the call. An officer came out and watched the video. He agreed it was her. And then, the bad news. Since the shoes were only worth about $120, it was a misdemeanor. He said he could go talk to her, but if she denied it, it would become her word against a video her lawyer could try to dismiss. He told me the DA was unlikely to press charges over a single pair of shoes, especially between neighbors. It could just be painted as a neighborly dispute. He suggested, and I swear I am not making this up, that I should try talking to her or going through the HOA, the dandelion police. I was stuck in a loop. The system that's supposed to protect you had completely failed. That night, I sat in my office staring at the footage of Karen stealing my package. It was so profoundly unjust it was almost funny. The woman who fined me for slightly too tall grass was a common thief, and she was getting away with it. That's when the thought hit me. If the system won't deliver justice, I'll engineer my own. I wasn't just going to catch her. I was going to create a consequence so immediate, so visible, and so satisfying that she would never think about my porch again. The mission was clear. Build a booby-trapped package that, when opened, would colorfully and semi-permanently mark the thief. No more plausible deniability. I was going to create a spectacle. The goal was simple, but the execution had to be perfect. The trap needed to be 3 things: effective, safe, and undeniable. First, effective. It couldn't just be a little puff of smoke. It had to create a massive, instantaneous, and sticky mess. That led me to dye packs, like the ones banks use. I wanted that, but bigger and messier. Second, safe. This was crucial. I'm not a monster. I didn't want to hurt her. The trap had to be non-pyrotechnic, using compressed gas or a spring, not a chemical explosion. Setting a trap that causes injury is illegal, even if the person is committing a crime. The goal was humiliation, not hospitalization. Third, undeniable. The whole thing had to be on camera, from multiple angles. This meant the package itself needed its own cameras. I needed to see her take it, open it, and I needed a front-row seat for her reaction. With those principles, I started sketching. My first idea was a simple spring-loaded lid, but that was too crude. The dye would just shoot up. I needed 360-degree coverage. This led me to a central pressurized canister system. Now for the components. This was the fun part. I basically moved into my local hardware and electronic stores. The housing. The package had to look real. I got a heavy-duty cardboard box, and inside, a product box for a fancy espresso machine. It looked expensive, and it was big enough to hide everything. The perfect bait. The dye. This took some research. I needed something super concentrated and intensely colored that would stain fabric and skin for a good long while, but was non-toxic. I landed on an industrial-grade textile dye in an offensively bright shade of blue. The kind of blue that says, "I've made a huge mistake." I mixed this powder into a clear, viscous gel medium to make it extra sticky and hard to clean. The dispersal mechanism. This was the heart of the machine. I decided on a hybrid spring and gas system. I got several small, disposable CO2 cartridges, the kind for bike tires. Then I 3D printed a custom manifold to hold 4 cartridges pointing outwards. The trigger was the trickiest part. I designed a system using 4 tiny micro switches, one under each flap of the espresso machine box. They were wired in series. All 4 flaps had to be lifted for the circuit to complete, preventing it from going off by accident. Once the circuit was complete, it would trigger a small servo motor. The servo would rotate, pushing a set of piercing needles into all 4 CO2 cartridges at once. The instant release of pressure would blast the blue goo out of 4 nozzles, creating a catastrophic 360-degree color explosion. The electronics. An Arduino Nano, a tiny microcontroller, was the brains of the operation. It would monitor the switches, fire the servo, and manage the cameras. Cameras and audio, the undeniable part. I bought 4 tiny, wide-angle spy cameras and drilled nearly invisible holes in all 4 sides of the bait box. They provided a full panoramic view from inside. I also included a sensitive microphone to capture every gasp and curse. The GPS tracker. What if she just tossed the whole messy thing in a dumpster? I needed my footage. So, I embedded a small battery-powered GPS tracker inside that would ping its location to my phone. Building this took about 3 weeks in my garage. And yes, there were failures. My first test with the dispersal mechanism, using water instead of dye, thank God, blasted a hole through a sheet of drywall. I had to redesign the nozzles. The second test in the backyard worked a little too well, covering half my lawn in what looked like a Smurf crime scene. But it worked. The final assembly felt like performing surgery. I carefully packed each component into the 3D printed chassis, wired everything up, and filled the dye reservoirs, which was a very tense operation. Finally, I printed a fake shipping label, scuffed up the box to make it look like it had been on a real journey, and packed it all up. It looked perfect. Just another box. But inside, it was a finely tuned instrument of blue, sticky justice. All systems were go. All I had to do was wait. I picked a Tuesday. Trash day. I knew Karen's routine. She'd be out in the morning, surveying the neighborhood for violations. Prime time. Around 9 a.m., I walked out and placed the package on my porch. My heart was pounding. This was it. I set it right where drivers always leave them, perfectly visible from the street. Then, the wait. This was the hardest part. I work from home, so I had the security feed on one monitor, the GPS app on another, and my actual work on a third. I tried to focus, but every car that drove by sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. An hour passed. 2 hours. My mail carrier came, looked at the box, and moved on. The disguise was working. At 11:30 a.m., there she was. Karen, in her neighborhood watch visor, moving her trash bins 1 inch to the left. She started her patrol down the sidewalk. My eyes were glued to the screen. She stopped at the edge of my driveway, pretended to look at my flower beds. Then her eyes darted to the package. She stood there for what felt like an eternity. You could almost see the gears turning. She looked up and down the quiet street. Then, with an infuriating casualness, she walked right onto my porch, scooped up the box, and headed back to her house. My phone buzzed. The GPS tracker was on the move. I watched the little blue dot crawl from my property to hers and stop right over her garage. The trap was sprung. But now came a new kind of torture. What was she doing in there? I just had to wait for her to get greedy. 10 minutes. 20, 30. My God, was she not going to open it? Then, at the 45-minute mark, the dot moved. It was leaving her garage, heading down the street. She was in her car. My heart sank. Was she going to sell it? Dump it somewhere? I watched the dot move across town and stop in the parking lot of a big department store. What was she doing? You can't return something you stole? I was completely baffled. My glorious, engineered revenge was sitting dormant in a parking lot, and I had no idea why. And then, it happened. I was staring at the GPS dot when my own security camera feed caught my attention. Karen's car was pulling back into her driveway. She got out of the car, and even from a distance, I could see it. She was covered in blue. Her face, her arms, her crisp polo shirt, all splattered with the brilliant blue of my trap. She slammed the car door with a rage I'd never seen from her before, frantically trying to wipe the dye off her face, which only smeared it everywhere like grotesque war paint. I scrambled to get the SD card from my porch camera system. I had to see the internal footage. My hands were shaking with excitement as I popped the card into my computer. The video started in darkness, inside the box. I could hear her carrying it, the car door opening, then the box being placed on the passenger seat. I heard the sound of her driving. Then, the engine cut. Silence. This was the parking lot. A moment later, the sound of tearing cardboard. Light flooded the box. The 4 cameras showed the immaculate interior of her luxury SUV, and they showed her, leaning over, her face a mask of greedy anticipation. She saw the espresso machine box. A small, triumphant smile played on her lips. She started pulling up the flaps. First one, then the second. She paused, glanced around the parking lot one last time. But her greed won. She pulled the last 2 flaps open at once. The 3rd and 4th micro switches clicked. The circuit was complete. For a split second, there was nothing. And then, the servo fired. The explosion was instantaneous. The 4 nozzles unleashed chaos. Thick streams of sticky blue gel erupted, propelled by the force of the CO2. The windshield was instantly painted blue. The leather seat was drenched. The dashboard, the ceiling, all of it covered. And Karen. She was right in the blast radius. Her eyes went wide with sheer terror. Her mouth opened in a silent scream as the blue goo hit her square in the face. She flailed, blinded, and drenched. The audio was just as good. After the shock came the cursing, a stream of profanity that would make a sailor blush. She was screaming, slapping at her clothes, trying to wipe the dye from her eyes. Oh my God! What is this? Get it off! The footage showed her trying to clean the mess with a few napkins, a futile and comical effort that just smeared the stain deeper into the leather and her skin. She glanced in the rearview mirror, saw her reflection, and let out a wail of pure despair. She looked like she had murdered a Smurf. Defeated, stained, and humiliated, she drove home. I saved the videos and backed them up on 3 different hard drives. It had worked better than I ever could have imagined. The next morning, the neighborhood was buzzing. Karen's car sat in her driveway, the passenger side covered with a tarp. Blue streaks were still visible on the window, and a vibrant splatter marked her pristine concrete driveway, a beautiful declaration of her guilt. Around noon, my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole. It was her. She'd scrubbed, but the results were patchy. Her face was a mottled mix of pale skin and blue blotches. Her hands and forearms were still distinctly blue. She was clutching an HOA letter, her face tight with fury. I opened the door. "Can I help you?" I asked, as neutrally as I could. She thrust the letter at me. A formal complaint against me for defacing community property. The blue stain on her driveway. The sheer, unmitigated gall. I almost laughed. "I think we need to talk," she hissed. "I agree," I said. "Come on in." She marched into my living room. I didn't say a word. I just picked up my tablet, tapped the screen, and played my greatest hits compilation. Her stealing the box, the explosion of blue, her screaming as she watched, all the color, the original, non-blue color, drained from her face. Her righteous anger dissolved into pure horror. When the video ended, she just stood there staring at the blank screen, utterly defeated. "The police have this footage," I lied smoothly. "And so does the HOA board. The GPS data showing you in a department store parking lot is a nice touch, don't you think? It makes the whole 'I thought it was my package' excuse a little hard to sell." She finally looked at me, all the fight gone. "What do you want?" she whispered. "Want?" I let the word hang in the air. "I want my stuff back. The running shoes, the watch, the tools. My records show it's about $750 worth of merchandise you've stolen." She flinched. "And I want you to stop," I continued, my voice low and steady. "Never touch another package on my porch. Withdraw this ridiculous complaint. And go buy the strongest solvent you can find and scrub that stain off your driveway. Because every time I look at it, I'll just be reminded of this conversation." I leaned in. "Here's the deal. You're going to go to an ATM, withdraw $750 in cash, and bring it back. You do that, and this video stays private. But if you try anything, I will make you famous in this neighborhood. Are we clear?" She just nodded, speechless. "Good," I said, opening the door. "I'll be waiting." An hour later, she was back with an envelope of cash. She wouldn't make eye contact. The next day, the HOA complaint was withdrawn. And that afternoon, I watched from my office window as she spent 2 hours on her hands and knees, scrubbing the blue stain off her concrete. It was the most satisfying home improvement project I've ever seen. So, that's the story of how a little engineering solved a problem the law and the community couldn't. Since that day, not a single package has gone missing from my porch. If you enjoyed watching a problem get solved with a bit of creativity and a whole lot of dye, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. I've always got new projects in the works. And I want to hear from you. Let me know in the comments what you would have done. Would you have gone the high-tech route? Or is there a simpler, even more devious solution you would have tried? I read all the comments, and I'm always looking for my next great idea. Thanks for watching. Looking back, it's wild to think it came to this. Building a dye trap was a last resort, born out of months of feeling completely powerless. The situation highlights a weird gap in our society. Package theft is a massive issue, but for the average person, there's often no real recourse. You're told to file a report you know won't go anywhere. You're told to talk to your neighbors. But what if your neighbor is the problem? Now, I'll be honest, I knew I was taking a risk. Building a device like this, even a non-harmful one, exists in a legal gray area. If something had gone wrong, if she'd had a 1 in a million allergic reaction or panicked and crashed her car, I could have been in serious trouble. The law gets a little fuzzy when it comes to booby traps, regardless of intent. I accepted those risks because the alternative, just letting her get away with it, felt unacceptable. The story spread through the neighborhood, though the details were fuzzy. People just knew something happened between me and Karen involving a package and a lot of blue. Her reign as the HOA's top enforcer came to an abrupt end. It's hard to maintain an air of moral superiority when you've been semi-publicly humiliated. In the end, this project was about reclaiming a sense of control. It was about sending a message that you can't just take from people without consequence. And while I wouldn't recommend this path for everyone, for me, it was the perfect solution. A victory for the little guy. And I have to admit, every time I see her car now, with the faint blue stain still visible on the edge of the passenger seat, if you catch the light just right, I can't help but smile.